Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm just curious, and maybe I can address this with the doctors. Why are we even talking about getting in clinical trials when the data of the patient, you're already at the office? Is there not like a master database when a patient is diagnosed? Part of the dialogue is to be, can I enter your name and your stats in the database? And therefore you can get a yes or no, and therefore when the trials or clinical trials come up, your patient's information is already there. It just seems like we're kind of behind, like, did you see about it? Did you read about it? I think it's important for the doctors when they're talking with their patients to already put their names in some like a database or something. Therefore, to make it a little bit more easier, I'm participating in a clinical trial now, and at the end of the day, I think it's great, but that's just because I always talk a lot. But not everyone's going to talk a lot, but I just find that we're asking if people know about it when at the end of the day, the database can be full of all sorts of information, and working with other clinics, it's just, you're already there. It just kind of seems like we're behind. Unless I missed something earlier.
I think the concept is excellent. It would be wonderful if we can get there. There are a number of issues with that. First of all, you have the HIPAA or privacy, patient privacy. So if you go into a database, who now has access to your medical information? It also makes the assumption that systems are sharing and working together, and we're not there yet. You know, there are so many different systems. Which is not to excuse it. I think it's a great concept. But I think that, and I'm repeating myself, but I think you've got to do what you did, which is say, what do you have for me? What are my options? Who else can I talk to? And that's why I say to people, if you can't do it, drag a friend along. We all have somebody, we all have that outspoken friend who will speak up for you. And especially in medicine this day and age, when doctors are rushing patients through, and some of that is simply because they got to do it to keep the lights on, you know, you really got to speak up. I think it's a great concept. I'd like to see us get there. I think it'll be a tremendous undertaking that someday we can do that.
And I also, as a clinician, you're not recognized by name, your number. And there's a whole bunch of numbers out there that we're looking at as a clinical perspective that we don't know who they are, and we can't know a name or a race or a gender. And when you do these research participation, there's inclusion and exclusion criteria. And they're looking at certain factors, but we're not looking at a name. You may be a gender, but it's always, it's kind of hidden. So it's very privileged to be in a study that you qualify for. That's the best way to say it.
I just had one more follow-up question. You see the commercials, you see the ads in the green sheet, and maybe even in your doctor's office, but is there like a top 3 or 5 tier of companies that do great clinical trials? Like, I see them all the time. I'm just sometimes too nervous because opportunities and cash.
The young lady from, can you speak to that? Or if you're not comfortable, then I will.
So you're asking about companies that do clinical trials, or that?
Yes. I mean, I'm a patient at UT Southwestern,
Yeah.
but I go to see my primary care physician. So usually if there's something, she may share, but if not, then, you're free to go. But sometimes you see other things of interest, and I was just curious if there's if someone was interested or looking to explore other options, what are the top clinical trial companies?
Yeah, I don't know of any. I wouldn't be able to sort of rank them by company. And most of what we do are, pharmaceutical and treatment trials for cancer. So it's not as much like healthy volunteer and that kind of thing. But what I can offer is that we do have, so we have adopted at UT Southwestern a study finder as our web trial search now. And it was actually homegrown by the University of Minnesota through one of their government grants, and they've shared it with us. And it's a lot easier to search clinical trials, in my opinion, through that Study Finder web search than it used to be on our own website. And then we link to the clinicaltrials.gov website on there, so you can also see where all those trials are offered. Now, it's going to be primarily treatment trials for diseases. I don't know much about companies that might offer trials for healthy volunteers as sort of a routine of what they do.
And I would just add, you want to be careful. If you see something and you think maybe that's for me, you really need to do your research and you need to get some expert input. You know, there are private companies that are doing a good job in doing important research, but again, you are the one who has your best interest in mind.